China is the world's second largest economy, with the economy expected to surpass the United States some point in the next decade, with the world's largest population, with a population of 1.382 billion people on a planet with 7.2 billion. To put it this way, 1 in every 7 people on this planet lives in China. However, China's population is expected to be surpassed by India within the next decade, as Chinese population growth has slowed thanks to the one-child policy. Though it did not stop China's population from growing, it did slow it, with a one-child policy in place from 1980 before being phased out in 2015, with it replaced with the two-child policy. To understand the reasoning behind the one-child policy, you need to understand China's population growth. In 1950, China's population was 552 million, more than doubling to over a billion in a span of 50 years, with an initial baby boom from 1950 to 1958. This was then followed by a decrease in the population due to the Great Leap Forward, in which an estimated 30 to 40 million people died due to famine caused by the policies of this Great Leap Forward. However, following the Great Leap Forward during the moderate period and then the Cultural Revolution between 1966 and 1976, China's population rose dramatically, hitting 1 billion in 1980. In an attempt to prevent overpopulation, which could lead to civil war, famine, and many other problems, the one-child policy was introduced in China in 1980, which prohibited Chinese couples from having more than one child, with strong penalties if they did, though there were exceptions to the policy, such as in rural areas and with ethnic minorities. At first, the policy was strictly enforced. Until the very end of the policy, there were severe punishments for those who breached it, with couples forced to pay a huge fine for the second child, with the second child known as the invisible generation because they were not recognized as citizens. They were denied public education and access to government jobs, with an estimated 13 million of these invisible children. Though there have been relaxations to the policy towards its later years, such as in 2013 when couples were allowed to have a second child if the first was a girl. The one-child policy in China has had both negative and positive effects. The policy is estimated to have prevented the births of around 300 to 400 million people, allowing for China to develop at a much more rapid rate, with up to 300 to 400 million brought out of poverty with strong rural to urban migration in this time, as many people migrated to the big cities in search of jobs, along with the fact that having one child has allowed for more people to have more money than they would have if they had to raise more than one child. China has also experienced strong economic growth during this time, with it rapidly growing between 1990 and 2010, with a massive demographic of China's population up to 70% of it working. However, the one-child policy has had its share of negative effects on China. As well, most notably is China's skewed population demographic, with 117 boys for every 100 girls in China. The reasons for this gender imbalance is because of a one-child policy, with boys generally preferred over girls. This meant that female babies were more likely to be aborted or tragically murdered. Because of this, there are around 30 to 50 million men in China who will not be able to find a partner. Also, because of a one-child policy, it has led to Chinese children being spoilt, with the culture of little emperor arising, with about 15% of Chinese children overweight. Furthermore, China's rapid development has had major environmental repercussions, with Beijing amongst the most polluted cities in the world. Also, China, as a result of this, has this 4-to-1 problem, as the only child is expected to support 2 parents and 4 grandparents, putting them at significant financial and social stress, as well as issues on where to put them all. Furthermore, China's population is expected to reach its peak in 2030, before its decline with an aging population. Chinese people are also expected to gain government permission to get married and have children, facing forced abortions for those who have a second child, which can cause severe emotional and social trauma on the mother. While the rural to urban migration in China has had strong positive effects on China, it too has had its negative drawbacks, with many people unable to bring along their children as it is too costly. This has led to the left behind generation, with up to 60 million children who have been left behind in the rural communities to be raised by their grandparents. They only see their parents once or twice a year, or in even some cases, they don't see them for many years. This has the potential to cause severe emotional stress for these children, which could lead to many falling into criminal activity or suffering mental illnesses. This movement has also had a negative effect on the grandparents who at their old age find it difficult to cope raising their child's child. In an effort to solve these problems, a one-child policy was repealed in 2015, with a two-child policy replacing it. Though it will take many generations for these problems to be fixed, if they ever are. And although the one-child policy may no longer be in place, many Chinese may not want a second child for the high expenses that it brings and a culture of one-child families developing over the course of 35 years. No matter what way you look at it, the effects of a one-child policy will be there for many generations to come, even though it is no longer in operation. Thank you guys, and if you enjoyed this, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment for more.